I'm Carrie Dara, and welcome to our Grow Cedar Valley webinar series. This morning, we're going to be talking about a very timely issue, and that is overcoming the stress of reopening your business. And it couldn't have come at a more opportune time, as we know, as we learn more and more businesses are being able to open. If they haven't already, they will be possibly shortly. So with us today, we have two guests who've been with us before, but they're experts in their field, and we appreciate them both being here. We have Amy Dutton, who's the director of the SBDC, Small Business Development Center office at UNI. And we have Paul Kinghorn, who's the director for the Center of Business Growth and Innovation, also at UNI. So I'll start first with both of you, just giving your introduction, especially on this topic matter or anything for that matter. So Amy, go ahead.
Good morning. As Carrie mentioned, I'm the director with the SBDC at the University of Northern Iowa. If you're not familiar, we're charged by the federal government and some state funds to provide no-cost confidential support to our small businesses. So that's what I do. It's looking a little different here in the last 8 weeks. So more of our focus has been turned to the issues related to the pandemic. And it is an evolution. We're kind of at a wave, a change point. So I'll looking forward to sharing some conversation about that.
Very good, very good. And Paul, welcome. Good morning.
So thanks for having us today. We look forward to the conversation. So I direct the Center for Business Growth and Innovation. The Small Business Development Center is one of our programs that we have that's outreaching to the university. We cover the entire state of Iowa. We tell people we have program support that covers anywhere from the idea stage all the way up through the exit. So business operations, particularly now as we're dealing with this crisis and then trying to get beyond it, certainly is in our wheelhouse, and we can empathize with everybody who's seen the disruption to their business, and we want to let them know that we're here with program services and resources to support them.
Very good. And let's get a little more specific. So as we know, when many or most, if not all of our businesses who had to closed quickly, I mean, like overnight or within a couple of 48 hours. And but now reopening, either for good or bad, is going to be going a little less quick, but still imminent nevertheless. So what are some things that we need to help our businesses at least relieve some of the stress or anxiety about what that looks, because it's going to come with a lot of regulation or recommendations. So Amy, go ahead. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the first part of it is to really, really do your homework. I think to be prepared helps just in and of itself relieve some of that stress, right? So if you can plan for the worst and hope for the best, hopefully that should ease your reentry. So, making sure that you're reading and understanding the expectations and roles. If you haven't seen the governor's proclamations, go out and find them online, read the actual language. And then I think the other big thing is the human part of it, right? So we've got these regulations, we've got all these boxes we need to fit in, but the other part is we're all humans, we're all trying to figure it out. So take it slow. Recognize that this process, as you just said, Carrie, is going to be a little bit different than just hitting the brakes. This is not a 0 to 100. This is recognize that you're going to have new processes, new systems. And if you have to hit pause and work out the kinks as you go along, that's okay. And I kind of, as I was thinking about today, wanted to talk about a couple businesses that I've seen do that. And I think if you do it well and you communicate, these both are, I would call Cedar Valley businesses. One's here in Dyke. Our local restaurant was allowing people to come in and pick up orders. Customers and staff starting to feel uncomfortable about that interface, regrouped, came up with a new plan, communicated it well. And Sweet Spot in Denver has had about 3 iterations of what it took for them to get their operation running. So be okay with that pivot and knowing that this is going to be a process.
And then not only you, other folks within your industry are doing the same thing, and your customers or those who you're providing services to get it too. And there's a certain amount, if there isn't, there should be a certain amount of grace that's understood between expectations and realizations. So,
absolutely. Good communication will go a long, long way in bridging that gap and making sure you get that grace.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Paul?
So recognize that all small business owners are also consumers. I would highly encourage people to keep their eyes open as they're interacting with other businesses and borrow heavily the best practices that they're seeing don't be afraid to incorporate different processes into your operation as you're having to deal with the impact. You alluded to, Carrie, the speed at which we had to cease operations in many cases, the abruptness to that. Don't feel like you have to get back up in that same speed. It's not practical. There's regulation prohibitions against it in many cases, so it's not even something that one can do, even if they wanted to and need to. We recognize that everybody out there, for the most part, there are some exceptions, but for the most part, is under strong financial pressures, right? Their cash flow got completely blown apart. Expenses still continue to operate and exist, in some cases, particularly fixed expenses, and they're eager to get back to some normalcy in their operation. As Amy had alluded to, be a little bit more intentional about it. Think through new processes that you have to put in place to ensure the safety of your guests and your employees. And then don't be afraid throughout the whole process to reach out to others to ask their advice and input. There's professionals like Amy, myself, and the people that work here within our programs, but there's also peer business owners. There's associations. I know the Main Street program is a wonderful resource for those that happen to live within that geography. Trade associations, there's lots of resources to tap into that can give you good advice and access to the resources and the help you need to be able to get back and going at a rate and a condition that's safe and prudent for everybody.
Right. You brought up a good point too, Paul, that while closing your doors or closing the doors of the businesses was a requirement, opening is a choice. I mean, when you open isn't required necessarily. So opening and being sure you're ready to be open, you don't want to have to close again. I think the worst thing, I think that's everybody's caution, is we want to be smart and safe. And we've been adopting the smart, safe step by step, as opposed to just open the doors and then let's see what happens. As you noted, there are some requirements and there's some requirements and recommendations that are going to come with reopening depending on the industry. So researching, as Amy said, where would some folks, other than looking at the governor's proclamation, where are some other resources people can go to find? I mean, we have several things on our website, but I know you've got other resources available to you that you could pass on.
Sure. So if I look a little distracted, my computer screen just went blank. So
well, we can see you.
We're all good. But the first place I would send people is to the CDC, especially if you're concerned about the safety element. You want to make sure that you're doing things from a safe standpoint. CDC is your home base for that scientific information, but put into terms that you can understand. Paul referenced trade groups. I think that's a great one. Iowa Restaurant Association has done a tremendous amount of work to be ready for their members. One that I had not thought of until yesterday as I was kind of preparing for today was your insurance provider. They don't want you to have a claim. They don't want you to have losses. And the one I happened to stumble across yesterday was Liberty Mutual. And they're putting together some nice guides to help businesses that are restarting. So there's lots of folks out there, as Paul said, your peers, your associations. Those are all great places like Main Street, Gross Cedar Valley, Cirrus, any other business support entity has got good information out there that can help you. You might even find your vendors, if you're in a particular trade, may have some guidance as well for things that they're coming up with to help your industry.
I would think your entire professional team, so your accountant, your attorney, your insurance provider, anybody, I mean, maybe reach out and say, is there anything I'm missing? I'm looking at this date. This is what I've got in place to open. What am I missing? And I'm sure that you won't be the only one making those calls to those folks. So go ahead, Paul.
Well, and to that end, be patient, because, lots of businesses are going through the same thought process, and they're reaching out to these same people. So the time frame historically that you might have been able to get answers back from your professional support staff or service providers, accountants, attorneys, whomever, is not going to be the same time frame, just because the nature of their getting hit on from lots of different people as well. So you had made reference to the resources on your page. I want to specifically call that out. You've pulled together a document called, I think, Work Hard, Work Smart, Work Safe. So if you go down under the COVID 19, learn more, and it'll take you to the link to it. Inside that document specifically spells out things to be concerned about. So as Amy alluded to before, there's the health implications. So how do you make sure that your operation is meeting the health requirements, both as far as sanitizing your space, social distancing requirements, testing employees as they're coming in to ensure that anybody who might have a spike in their temperature is isolated, identified as quickly as possible, and kept out. Because at some point, and no matter what your take on the whole crisis is, nobody wants to find themselves in a situation where something happens and they're having to react to or mitigate that damage, especially when their intent is to serve their customers and get their operation back and established as best as possible.
Right. Amy said one thing in our last webinar that you were guests of ours about to be able to survive this. Now we're in opening mode, but this is way back when we were talking about survival mode. Look at your business plan and look at it from the consumer's perspective. And it may need to be reworked entirely. And I would offer the same thing as you reopen your business. Walk in your front door as your customer or your guest or your client, and don't assume anything. And is there communication there about you need to stand this far apart, or we require masks if you do, or whatever those measures are in place that you're going to be introducing differently. Make sure it's communicated or over communicated so you can manage those expectations about what that first visit's going to be like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that communication piece is so key. And so, personally, I had an experience with a business that we had not been going to get takeout food. Just hadn't been part of what we had been doing in the last couple months. And a favorite place of ours to eat happens to be Urban Pie. And they had posted about, this is what you can expect when you come in to get your food. And they had pictures of what their carryout process looked like. And within a week, we chose to get food there. For me, it was because I felt at ease knowing what the business was doing to protect their staff and to protect us. So share with your clients on social media, on your Facebook, on your website, wherever you can. As you said, great signage. Make it easy for the customer to envision doing business with you. Help them to understand what that process is going to look like. Just yesterday, I noticed that Salon Iris has posted on their Facebook page some great visuals of all the different things that are going to change when you come in and do business there in a really easy to understand way. So again, no surprises when the customer shows up. But be flexible. Maybe your audience, maybe 80% of your audience is really comfortable coming into your store in this new post-COVID kind of reality. Maybe some of them aren't. Maybe you have a vulnerable population. You might still have to think of ways to continue to offer some adjusted service to make those folks feel comfortable. But I just can't say enough about how important the communication piece of this really is on all fronts.
Right. Go ahead, Paul.
And so along the same lines, so a restaurant, we can all look to a restaurant, some of the restaurants in the area as a perfect example. Those of us who at first had been accustomed to eating out, and then all of a sudden that was seemingly taken away, partly because restaurants didn't know how to react, and so they ceased operations. Those that didn't traditionally deal with carryout. Then as they started coming back online, got creative, innovative, whatever, to bring some of these services back online and operational. Then those of us who frequented restaurants, unlike Amy, who apparently doesn't, we noticed that the operation wasn't at the same standard it was before. Food quality suffered, time of ordering, communicate. I mean, there's lots of things that suffered. Now, to their credit, and part of that's because it was something new that they were still working out, fleshing out. To their credit, most of them have gotten much better at and more efficient, right? Call in advance, take the order. As soon as you get there, text us, let us know. We'll bring the food out to you. All these little processes are going on. So they had a chance to kind of figure it out. But in some cases, they did some damage to their brand if the customer didn't have a particularly good experience while they were starting to figure it out on the fly. So if you're not one of those companies that have been figuring it out, and so reopening is not that big of a deal because you've already kind of worked these systems or these needs into your system, I would highly advocate that you sit down and think through, as you pointed out earlier, Carrie, what does that look like to your customer? If it's going to be longer wait times, if it's not going to have the same interactions that we had before, we have got to communicate to them and set the expectation that the experience is going to be different. Still want to serve you. It doesn't matter what way you serve. And mostly we're talking here more of the business to consumer model. But the same thing holds true when you're dealing with B2B, whether you're a manufacturer, or you're providing services to another company. Let them know what the process is and what their expectation can be from you, and then just recognize, let's have tolerance for everything. I read a story recently about an ice cream shop. I think it was in Massachusetts that had opened. Um, they had all kinds of problems. Customers were berating teenagers working in this ice cream shop, so much so that the owner finally just said, enough. I mean, one day into it, said, we're not going to do this. This is ridiculous that somehow we lost sense of our civility. We need to maintain patience with each other and just know that people are doing the best that they reasonably can.
Absolutely. One question that has come up to us at Grow Cedar Valley from folks who have read these proclamations are, you can have up to 50% of your occupancy, and that is that, if you could answer that question, is that 50% of what would be maximum occupancy? And then what business ever has maximum occupancy unless it's like an event?
Right. So I can answer it on as regarding restaurants, it's 50% of your seating capacity. So
Okay.
prior to the declaration, you could seat 100 in your dining room. You may now have 50 in your dining room, but also within those 6-foot guidelines.
Got it.
And no party greater than 6. Just want to stress that is, even if you come in with 12 of your relatives, you will be seated separately. No parties greater than 6. They're sticking to that. I would recommend that you contact, if you're a storefront, and again, as you said, that maximum capacity might be kind of a funny number. When are you ever going to have that number in your store? I would contact the fire marshal in your community for a little guidance on that one. That has been foggy, and that's what kind of guidance we're getting.
Good point.
But along the lines of the fire marshal, though, it's not what the business can hold according to the fire marshal. It's whatever you had prior to. So you can't say, well, we didn't have enough tables, but now we can cram more in.
No. And I don't mean specifically for retail, not for restaurants.
Okay.
Restaurants, it's clear. Retail is a little trickier.
Got it.
So, yeah. And again, you may also want to use your own common sense. If your store feels tight with 10 people in it, make the number small.
Right.
And again, it comes down to communication. Let people know if you're going to only allow so many in the doors, put a sign up or provide a way for them to call and check how many people are in the store so that they can know if they can come in or not.
Right. Well, regardless, so I think the takeaways here are, do your research. I mean, do as much as you can within your industry specifically so that you know exactly what's going to be required. Look at your business from your consumer's eyes so that they're completely comfortable and feel safe doing business with you. And then communicate, and over.
And I just want to throw one more thing in there, and that's about employees. Mm-hmm. We can't do any of what we do without our staff. So make sure that communication is also happening with your employees, and that they understand and see that their safety is valued. And then the big thing is make sure that they have a mechanism to report concerns or to bring up suggestions or changes without fear of repercussion. They're going to be the ones on the front line seeing what works and what doesn't. Make sure that they have a good path to provide that helpful information back to management so that you can improve for the sake of everyone.
Well, I think it's also important that your employees believe in what you're doing. I mean, having your employees who are your frontline people and they're not really agreeing with the standards or the measures that are either required or chosen to be put in place, that's going to be a problem with the communication. So, I mean, your employees need to really believe and support what you're doing as a business to help keep everyone safe.
Absolutely.
That's critical.
One other thing to keep in mind when you're planning this is also your supply chain.
Mhm.
Because just because you can open doesn't mean you can get, inventory and things that you need to deliver the products and services that you're historically doing. So for sure, make sure you check with your suppliers, distributors, whoever it is that you rely on, and get assurances to whatever degree they can give you
Absolutely.
that you'll be able to keep operationally afloat there.
Absolutely. Well, good conversation, good takeaways. We're about out of time if people want to hop on and see the governor's briefing at 11 o'clock. But do either of you have any parting comments you want to share with the group?
Again, I would just encourage you to reach out for help. Those of us there at the Center for Business Growth and Innovation and the Small Business Development Center are there to help. Whether it's just thinking through some of the logistics or helping you track down regulations, that's what we're there for. So don't hesitate to get in touch.
Absolutely.
Be optimistic, be patient, and I
Right.
think we'll get through this.
Absolutely. Very good. Well, thank you both again, Paul Kinghorn and Amy Dutton from UNI, Small Business Development Center and Business Growth and Innovation. We couldn't be here without you, so we appreciate your leadership and your expertise and that you're willing to share with us and our audience. So thanks again. For those of you who are viewing, we will have another webinar this Thursday morning, same time, 10:30. And Thursday, we'll be talking about cybersecurity. So those of you, as you're rebooting and you're reopening up your doors, there are other measures of security that need to be in place. So make sure you tune in. We've got the folks from LockNet Security that are experts in their field that can help us navigate through this and make sure that we're safe on all fronts. So thanks again, Paul and Amy. And for the rest of you, we'll see you on Thursday. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
Carrie.
You
Bye-bye.
bet. Bye-bye.